Okay. Hey, everybody. So, as you said, this is a talk on integration tests. It's called, there's a subtitle, My Pain, Your Profit, simply because I went through a lot of trouble with this many different times and probably will end up happening again. Just a little bit about me. My name is David Larrabee. Everyone, including who I work with, call me Squid, except maybe family. So you can call me either. So I'm a lead engineer at MeYou Health. I'm on the core team for Red Potion, as well as promotion. And I kind of stalk on RMQ, which is actually how I got started in all this stuff. I did a bunch of PRs, and Todd kept telling me to do more. So you can get a hold of me on Twitter or GitHub at Squid Punch.
Is that a photo you from this morning?
Oh, it is actually. And so funny story. On the way here, so I have a bit of an obsession with Rubik's Cubes. I'm no pro, so don't someone throw one at me and have me get it done in like 30 seconds. It's not going to happen. But when I was flying here in the airport, there was a Sudoku Rubik's Cube. And I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting. And it exploded in the airport because it was a $5 thing that like we probably should never have bought. So I'm spinning it and it just went everywhere. And like there was a little kid who had a Rubik's Cube and just laughed at me. So that was pretty amazing. I'm gonna do my best to do this kind of quickly because it's really hot. I'm happy about the heat though because I can blame my nervous sweating on the heat actually. So that's awesome. So this is a little bit about MeYou Health. I have some speaker notes to remember something, but so we have 5 different apps. 2 of them are Ruby Motion, these 2 here. The other ones were, this one actually isn't an iPhone app at all. That one is Objective-C, and this one is Objective-C. That one is Do More, Be More, Eat Better, which is, actually I work on this app, Hello 200. Quit Smoking, and Walk More. So we're a health and wellness app, or health and wellness business. We have you do small things for population as opposed to very big changes for you. So let's talk about testing. So I heard about 50% of the people here are students, so I don't know how familiar you are with testing or these kind of things. So I have a Rails background. I've only been doing Ruby Motion for about a year. Probably my first PR was in the first couple months or so. But I have been doing Rails for a long time. So I'm used to RSpec and Cucumber and these kind of things. And so we have MacBacon, which is a lot like RSpec. Motion juxtapose, I don't know, Jamin actually mentioned it. I don't know if it was during his talk or if it was just randomly in conversation. But that's good for a screenshot test. And then these here, motion-calabash, Crescentia, and Appium all fill that Cucumber side of the things, integration. And some of them are painful, some of them are okay. We'll go through. I just forward fast about 5 slides. Okay, so this is your very bare bones, quick MacBacon test. You just are testing a screen, and it should look like something. You're looking for something you're looking at the view for something called posts, and it should not be nil. That's one way to test that kind of thing. With motion juxtapose, you can have this nice little matcher here that says it should look like a post screen with data, and it will save a screenshot of what it should look like. And if that screen changes, it will fail. And apparently I put an arrow there and forgot, so we'll just go. So I really like motion juxtapose. There's positive and negatives to anything. The one negative I can say about it is, I won't even call it a negative, but let's say you have a pretty big app with multiple screens, and then you go through and do this really simple UI change. Like for example, if you have this app here, and all of these green areas used to be black. So then every single test that you had with a screenshot will fail until you go through and save them all again. So that can be a little frustrating. But what it can do is it can save you for problems like this. So this is just to show you, it has a Sinatra web interface to approve and see the failures. So back to this app here. We have this tab bar navigation control, and each one of these are custom images. And they're all of them were using one way to instantiate the tab bar, and it was like reusable code that I didn't want to repeat over and over again, except this guy here. It was the same way it was initialized, but the image didn't conform to the same standard. So we renamed the asset so it would work. Rename an asset doesn't make your app fail. It doesn't make it crash. It doesn't make anything. This screen right here is the very first screen that a user sees after they sign up for the application. Not something I see that often. So as you can see, that's what that screen would have looked like after that change. And it says tap where? So this saved our butt, pretty much. Yeah, well, what happened was, so on this screen, we use RMQ heavily. The whole app was built on RMQ over a year ago. And so we use it's RMQ image, and then we provide the file name. And the file name changed. But that doesn't blow up if it's not there. It just doesn't load anything. And I keep blowing in the mic. Sorry. Okay, so for integration testing, what I used to have is a thing called Motion Frank. And I don't know, is anybody familiar with it at all? Okay, yeah. There was a gun to the head over there. So it uses Frank Cucumber, which is something that iOS users use. My problems with it are, yeah, well, they probably won't fit on the slide, you're right. But a couple things to note is there's, I put dependency issues is because Motion Frank is based on the Frank gem, which is based on Frank Cucumber. I'm already confusing myself. And then it's also using the Sim Launcher gem. There was a point in time when Ruby Motion went to require 64-bit, and then none of my tests would pass because Ruby Motion would say, you don't have 64-bit binaries for these files. They would just ignore it, and then I couldn't actually run my tests anymore. So I went through the trouble of forking all 3 of those gems, fixing it, and it worked for a while, and then there was an Xcode update, and it didn't work again, and I just gave up. Part of the problem was the Motion Frank gem is like 3 versions behind on a dependency check, so you have to fork that one just to even use the latest version. So I kind of gave up, and I actually submitted a talk to talk about Red Potion, but apparently it's a little popular, so so I was asked if I could come up with something else. And I said, this really makes me angry. I can rant about this for a long time. And I probably could even longer. So then there was another one called motion-calabash. So motion-calabash, similar to Motion Frank, it uses Calabash iOS. The benefits of this, though, is it does iOS and Android. So you could kind of share the knowledge of testing both frameworks. The problem you might know is the latest Calabash Cucumber was May 2015. The latest gem for Motion Calabash is 2013 with a hard dependency. So same thing, you'd have to fork it and update it. And this wouldn't even run with how old the version is. It would just fail. Motion Crescentia, I don't know if that's pronounced correctly, but this was actually developed by a guy on GitHub by Shirk. I have no idea what his real name is. It's also based on Calabash. He wrote it for the same reason that I was having problems with Frank and Calabash, is everything was dependent and it was behind. So he wanted, and he actually was PRing both Frank and Calabash to bump the dependencies, and they just weren't getting merged as people were ignoring them. So he built this. Unfortunately, I had the exact same problem with this gem at one point, where I came back to it when I got accepted to do this talk. I said, oh crap, I have to make something work. So I tried to use this, and I had the same problem. So I PR'd a fix to it, but then I decided that I would say maybe there's something better. And I actually asked in the Infinite Red guys like what they use for this kind of thing. And Mr. Gant over here actually mentioned appium. So this is what I use today, is appium. It's pretty easy to, so because I use Frank, I have all these Cucumber fixtures that were there, or Cucumber features that were there. And I didn't want to rewrite all my tests, although I kind of had to do that anyway. So we'll get over that in a minute. But you just install Cucumber. You have to install an appium lib gem, Cucumber init if you've never used Cucumber before in that project. And then you have to update a support file and juxtapose if you want to use that for screenshot stuff inside of your integration tests as well. So this is pretty much boilerplate that came from Appium's website on how to set up Cucumber with Appium. Some key things to note is I'm added juxtapose, and I call this setup, which comes from juxtapose saying you need to do that in here. And then down here, your before and after is how it actually works. So when it runs a feature, it starts your driver. When it stops, it quits the driver. And then this here, this appium load file, I think I actually have a slide with that file as well. Oh. So this is that file, the appium load file. I didn't change the title. Ignore that. Jim, and he probably did this slide, right? You pretty much are just, so appium works with, I didn't mention this before, but it works with iOS and iOS and Android as well. So you have to tell it what platform, you can tell it what device, and what version. And then you have to tell it the directory to your actual app. There was something else there, but I'm going to skip it because I don't remember right now. So then if you want to set up juxtapose, there's a couple things. We could probably make this better, but for now, you actually just have to copy this into your features step directory. You want to have a method that's called screenshot verify, which uses this matcher here. And it attempts to verify however many you say here. That's mostly for animations, because if you have something animated on the screen, they want to wait until it's kind of animated and done, and nothing's moving before it actually takes that screenshot. So here is a really quick feature file from this really amazing app called To Do that I used. It's really script-like. So at work, a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want this. And then I do this, and then I do this, and then I do this. So you could just boil it down to this same thing here, where when I add a new to-do item with this body, then it should show that information. And I think, yes, I can show you guys that real quick. Yeah, I'm probably not supposed to do this. What does that say? Wrong one. To do. Okay, so you have to run appium, and that's just going to run in that over there. Appium has a GUI client as well as a terminal that you can install from Node. I usually just run this unless I need to inspect a little bit further. So you can just run cucumber. It's really hard to type and look at the other screen at the same time. And assuming that I didn't do anything wrong, wow, okay. That was a little faster than I thought. It also looks scaled weirdly.
Scroll up the window,
Command 3? Yeah. So I did write a test for my slides. Who said that? Create slides for the doc. And then it passed because the screenshot matched. And that's not up. Thanks. Okay. What the heck? Okay. I don't know.
Or do you have more demos?
Yeah. There's one more, but yeah, it's fine. Actually, the one more may just be it's too hot and we can just go on. I can show you guys later. So the only thing is that test was an app that has no API, no data, nothing, and it's very simple. But I don't know how many of you actually work on apps like that, because I don't. So what we usually do to test that is most people would say you fake it. Right? You mock it. You mock the HTTP request. You mock the data, whatever you want to do. Dependency injection. There's all kinds of different options. You can use motion stump. You can use web stub. But then what about all these scenarios? You know, you could do that as well. You can stub all these scenarios, but you can't get them all. Like, if it's a 10-step process, it's very hard to get that 10-step process, all of those different things stubbed out. And then if you want to take into account that you have a remote API that's totally independent to your app, and it could very well change. So my team's small enough that it doesn't really happen that often, but one person could change an API and all the tests pass because everything's stubbed and mocked out, and then all the client tests pass because everything's stubbed and mocked out. But then what really happens is the app just crashes because it's expecting X when you get Y, or it doesn't have an attribute anymore, and your client's not smart enough to fail nicely on those kind of things. So what we do, we take it one step further, and this is a really crappy, I'm not really good at slides. I don't have Todd's flair by any means. But so what we do is we actually use fixtures on our server. So what I do is, on the client side, I have a cucumber feature with a tag, and I have an around scenario that we'll come back to that in a minute. On the server, I'm running a Rails server on test in it with a named pipe, and with files that match up to these tags over here. So yeah, a bunch of arrows. Okay, so here's a feature file from my actual Hello 200 app that I just showed you before. It's actually real changes. It's just simply making a comment, making sure that the person can open the app, comment on something, and it doesn't blow up. That's the step file for it. I threw that in quickly. So there's a couple things where I'm doing a screenshot verify there. This is where I'm touching something on the screen. This is just by touching it by name. So usually you can touch things by accessibility labels because it uses UI automation, I think. But sometimes you have to use the XPath, which is annoying. And the way you find the XPath is use the GUI version of the client because you can't do it through the terminal. Some other stuff. I kind of just mentioned this, but sometimes things will be visible on the screen, but they're not tappable. And they actually are tappable. And when you use the GUI editor to find the thing, and then you say, oh, this is the XPath, and you tap it, they even have a thing that you can record the script and then copy and paste it in, and it still doesn't work. And I have no idea why. So if you guys want to fix it, please do. The screenshots. By default, you have a status bar which has your time and your date. You can imagine that probably doesn't work very well sometimes. So there's ways, I've come up with ways around a lot of these things. So the timestamp, here's the example of 10 minutes later I ran this test and it failed. Well, there's two ways to fix this problem. One is if you're using Red Potion, you can just, monkey patch some things and make the status bar hidden. And the way that what I do with this though is in my rake file, this is a little bit of a contrived example, it's not exactly what I do. But when I run my integration test, I pass in an environment variable, which includes files that are outside of the app directory that are these monkey patches that I don't want to ever go to the real app. Another way is simulator status magic. I don't know, anybody use that at all? So it does the same thing. It makes your status bar a static time. And it's really good for if you want to do app store screenshots, if you want them to be all consistent time instead of 8:59, 3:27, and all kinds of weird numbers. But the problem is if this pod is anyhow compiled into your app when you submit to the App Store, and that means if you compile just for integration test, and then remove the pod and still runs, or don't actually use the code that the pod, let me say that again. If you have the pod installed, and you don't actually use the code that sets the status bar up, I still got a warning that it was using private binaries. So what I had to do is I had to the same kind of thing that I did here, is I just put the pod in my integration task, which does some things, puts the pod in, and I do a rake clean all the time, which I can do now. This app used to take 50 minutes to compile, and now it takes 5. So thanks again, Watson. Yeah. So I would never have been able to do this back then, because I could compile 8 times a day and then go home, and that'd be. So I did my best to never never clean. So nuclear, never used. Yeah. Okay, so the last one was a demo that was showing all that fixturing thing. I can show you guys that real quick. Yeah.
You can also set a fuzz factor on your screenshot.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Oh, I wonder if that would work for the stat,
yeah.
for the time. Yeah. Yeah, probably.
I never run into that problem. I just do 50% or so.
Oh, so there you go.
Yeah.
Cool. So I can show you guys this. This is my last demo, and I don't think, well, I'll show the demo after the slides, because I don't think I really have much else. I'll show the slides, then the demo. So apparently I already said that. Oh, I just copied this again. I said, remember this fixture or feature file? This is the one I showed you before with the steps. And then here is actually here is the fixture file on the server side. So the Groundhog Day thing has been around since I started the project. It was before me, and I actually don't think this is really used anymore. But the long story short, actually no, it is used. So when I create this proof data, it has to be, because my activity stream has dates in it as well. So I have 2 things going against me. I have the time that's on your actual device, and I also have the time of the data that was submitted into an activity stream of stuff that I'm showing you, like timestamps. So we just make sure that it sets to some day, which happened to be Groundhog Day, because why not? And then I push the data into the server. So I said before, I have like a rake task that does all this stuff for me. So I literally just run one shell script to do these integration tests, and it runs this rake task, which makes sure that the environment was set correctly, does a clean all, adds in anything that I am monkey patching for this, and then now adds this pod as well. Calls rake pod install, build simulator. It doesn't do anything else except build simulator because the test running has to be done outside of this. This is just a compile until it's ready to go. And yeah, I'll do the demo at the end. So I just said, what about the future? I watched one of the videos in WWDC, and the guy started with like, everyone loves testing, right? And in a room of Rubyists, they're all like, yeah! But in this demo, it was like silence. And he's like, let me try that again. Everyone loves testing, right? And like a couple of people kind of said something. And he showed this demo where he was running this game, and as he was changing things on the screen, it started like recording his test script for him. And it was all UI automation stuff. So I'm wondering how much of this can like bleed over to what we use going forward. These are all resources. So I'll show the demo quick. Oh, and I never set the time, so I have no idea how long it took. Okay, so on this screen here is that listener, the Rails server running on a named pipe, and on this screen here, I'm just going to run that task yeah, I'm going to turn. So this is the one that I showed you before on a slide. So I just make sure that I'm on the latest master of code, which is what's going on there. Then it's going to compile the app. Maybe. Oh, there we go. Yeah, it does. It shouldn't take that long, though. Oh, I wanted to talk to you about this, Ken. I have, so you have schemas or like migrations. Do I have to keep all four of those?
You have to keep any that have ever gone
To production, even if it's like an app update. Yep. Okay, that's what I thought. Oh, that's not what I wanted.
Anything that anyone could possibly have.
Okay.
You need to keep it. That's how it does the automatic migrations.
Yeah. Okay. So this is a little not so much fun to watch, but anybody want to Gant, would you like to come up and dance for the audience?
My dance will be later, don't worry.
Anyway, so this is the same as before. While it's running, I can there we go. So what it does now is while it's booting up, it pushed the data already, so that's why this is already filled out with information. That was in that fixture file. A proof is this concept here. And then I click on the proof. It already has a comment. I'm going to click on the comment, and then I'm going to enter a comment back. You can make this faster, too. There's a way to just like bang it in and then hit post. But this is like a custom control that I have to actually hit post on. And then it just verifies that the screen looks correct. Click on the person's profile that just commented. I go to the profile, and everything looks like I expect it to. So there you go. I was going to say any questions, but there's already one up there.
I was wondering, how do you run this on a CI server?
So there is a server. This is a better question probably for Gant, but there is a thing called Sauce Labs, and they can run these for you. So yeah, the Rails server stuff would be a little bit trickier. So you'd have to like set up a server that it could hit. That's one thing I didn't point out. So when I run that server, I run it on a special port, and I run it as local. But when I run a production app, I'm going to a totally different server, obviously. So in that integration thing, it's actually pulling from a config file that I have that says like what server I should hit and all these things. So that's stored there.
The next question was, you know Ruby's VCR? It's a gem that
Yep.
helps you
Yeah, the only problem is then so the connect.
The problem with the stale API.
Yeah, so that's the reason why I don't.
That it's much more.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah, you could do that, especially for like CI or something. You could have it recorded and then use those, and then just have something. So I don't use this. I don't run this every day, obviously. But what I do is I usually run the entire suite before I'm going to submit to the App Store, because then I know that what I've done is running. Or if I know that like an API has changed that I'm not sure is going to break on an older version of the app, then I may run it just a sanity check. Any other questions?
And what's the process for generating the screenshots?
Oh, so you just use that matcher, and if there's no screenshot, then it will fail, saying that there is no screenshot. And then you just accept that screenshot, and going forward, if it as long as it matches, then it's fine. Yeah. It depends on how many you have. It's quick to create the screenshots. It's not too bad. When they fail, it takes longer because you saw that it tries 10 times. So essentially, it has to fail 10 times before it will like kick out. So, but you can make that smaller. It doesn't have to be 10. That's just what motion juxtapose originally suggested. But the problem is the test that I just ran. So I see. Then I should see my comment in the list. That's a screenshot. Then I should be on my profile. On the profile, that's also a screenshot. So if this one fails, then I have to fix this one before I even know if this one's going to fail. So I have to run it twice to fix all the screens, for example. So that's why it depends on how many you take and how many are in succession.
And we don't use this level of integration testing, but we do use motion juxtapose a lot. And I found that it was actually a lot faster if you're just using the traditional just MacBacon / motion juxtapose to put it all in one it block.
Yeah.
Just put a whole bunch of screenshots. Just load up this screen, the screenshot, load up this screen.
Oh, interesting.
You could really cut your time, but we had the same problem where one of these would fail and you'd have to accept it and rerun. Another one would fail. So
Yeah, I mean, exactly, there's trade-offs. You again?
yeah, I was wondering if you want to move this into a gem like motion, appium, or something.
So this guy. Yeah. Yeah, no, Gant and I were talking about it. Part of the problem is what I did was like very much baked into my app, assuming that I'm going to have like this API fixture thing that maybe no one uses. And
Because I've done the same setup, and I know, yeah, you have to, the thing with, I don't know, the appium JSON configuration, and that can be moved into a gem.
Yep, definitely. So yeah, so that's what I plan to do is like see what I can pull out that makes sense and make it into a gem, without all of the like complication of like what I use that maybe no one wants to use. And then like if more people want to use those things, then we can pull it back in as a feature, and then get other people working on it than me. Todd.
Could you call that gem appium?
I think I actually already created a gem called Motion Appium. I just never actually did anything with it. Oh, potion. Oh, appium potion. What was the other? It was selfie stick. Yeah, selfie stick. Yeah. Anybody?
That would be great because it takes big. Oh, that's
That's juxtapose. Anybody else?
Any kind of missing features, or is there like this works well, but ideally I would be.
So some of the missing features are just I don't know. In my opinion, some of it's just bugs, like being able to tap and like not working. So some of these I'd have to open it, but some of them like I know that there's an accessibility label and I cannot tap it. It just doesn't work, and the XPath doesn't work either. So I literally have to just tap a coordinate on the screen, and then that works fine, except when you readjust the screen. And this app, we're still like actively developing it, and it changes a lot. More so than it probably should. And then so what'll happen is, it'll be like, oh, can you move that label down 5 points? Oh, yeah, sure. And then all of a sudden the test that was like tapping that one label because I couldn't hit it by accessibility label no longer works. Then I have to like go back in, fire up the appium thing to like, okay, what coordinate would that be? Because I don't know it. Gant has some ideas of like pulling some stuff from like ARMQ to like get some of that stuff, like get the XPath from it or the position or whatever, and then maybe we could wire things up. That would be something that could definitely help, I think. Yeah. It's actually pretty new. Like I literally got this all working again within like a couple weeks before this conference, and I had no integration testing working at all. And I was like, well, if I'm going to talk about integration testing, it should probably work. So, anyone else? Yeah? Jamin?
So you said you haven't done any Android, right?
I have not.
So you probably don't have any idea what testing integration testing might look.
So the way that Appium works is you have to have a compiled version of the app, and it refers to that, and it runs. So I believe it should be probably very similar. So if you could do a Cucumber driver to drive those tests or something similar, it should work. But no, I have no idea. I haven't done it. And then also the problem with Android, at least from what I hear, is the simulator starting up and stuff like that. So I don't. If you can still use, what was it, Gen 2 or something? Jetty Motion. Then maybe it would be useful. Otherwise, I think you'd be back to what I was doing before, an hour compile and go home. Anybody else? Okay, I think that means we get the cool down. Thank you.